Thank you. Well, I think let's go ahead and get started. I think we have a nice, yes, a nice intimate group. So I'm Nathan Scott. I am the Executive Director of MassEnergize, and we are here to talk about empowering communities. We'll talk a little bit more about MassEnergize and what we do, and then talk about what we want to address as far as today's topic. So I really want this to be an informal conversation. I'd love to be learning, sharing, having you share, learning from you as well. So I do have a PowerPoint, and which I'll be going through with some of the work we're doing, but I really think this is the best learning happens mutually. So MassEnergize, I think I'm guessing a few of you have heard of us and others perhaps not. We are a statewide nonprofit working with communities, and really our work is primarily through supporting and building community leadership for climate action. So we work with a variety of other organizations, and we provide support services. We have digital support services, we do trainings, we do a whole variety of things, but really our mission is to support community leadership, to engage residents in climate action. So that's kind of what we do. So you've heard, some of you heard reference to some of the other organizations: Energize Acton, Energize Framingham, Energize Wayland. I mean, there's a whole variety. We actually have 30 different Energize communities around the state. Not all called Energize. JCAN is one of them, one of the organizations and the community leaders that we support. And what we're starting to, and we provide a variety of supports. One of the things that we're starting to do more and more of is actually run programs. So Deborah, looking at you and thinking about Amherst, we've just submitted a grant, the Regional Energy Planning Association grant, to work with Amherst to do kind of clean energy engagement. So if we get the grant, you'll be hearing more about it. And even if we don't get the grant, happy to talk to you. Variety of things that we do. Now, EJ, working in underserved neighborhoods, working in environmental justice neighborhoods is not necessarily our focus, but it is by default important work that we do. So really this session is to kind of talk a little bit about our work and not so much, well, our work, but what have we learned from working in underserved neighborhoods with environmental justice neighborhoods. So I'm going to share some of our lessons, some of our experiences, but then I'd love to hear from you. What's been your experience? What kind of lessons can we share? So a couple of our environmental justice initiatives. And the one that I'm going to be focusing on is the first one, Solar para Todos. This is an initiative, briefly, that we are working with in the city of Framingham, with Brazilian and Latino, predominantly Spanish-speaking communities, to really infuse the environmental justice neighborhoods with information and support for for community solar. And I'll go into a lot more detail, but that's what this is about. So it's obviously Solar para Todos. Those of you who speak Spanish or Portuguese, and those of you who don't, can figure out, solar for all. It's different from the federal EPA Solar for All, but the idea is the same. How do we make clean energy accessible and available to all? So our second one, and I'm just kind of listing, and I'm just going to give you a snapshot of what we're doing, but I'm going to be doing a deeper dive into what we've learned and our experience with Solar para Todos. The second one that we're doing right now is actually up in the city of Newburyport, working with elders, working with older adults in the city of Newburyport on a program we're calling Energy for Generations. And the idea, once again, is supporting elders, older adults, with access to information about clean energy is really what we're doing. And what we've done is we've recruited and trained people who we call clean energy counselors, elders, who have been trained as clean energy counselors to be resources for other elders in the community. So we're working in lower income neighborhoods, We're working with, Newburyport Housing Authority. We're working with the Newburyport Senior Center. We're working through organizations that are serving elders in order to provide access to these resources, which is information about heat pumps, clean community solar, rooftop solar, EVs, and basically providing support services so that elders can gain access to information. They have somebody to turn to who can be, heat pump coaches, clean energy counselors, etc. So our role as MassEnergize is really to support the network that then supports communities who have questions, needs for information, et cetera, et cetera. So that's Energy for Generations. The Community First Partnership, some of you, how many people do you know that term? Is that a familiar concept to anybody? Okay, the Community First Partnership is actually a program run by MassSave. MassSave, you all know, is a program of the collective in Massachusetts utilities. And the Community First Partnership is a MassSave initiative to support communities around the state with specifically who are working in environmental justice neighborhoods or what's called, quotes, priority populations. Now, the definition of priority population and environmental justice neighborhood are not identical, but there's a big overlap between those communities. So we are one of multiple MassSave Community First Partnership providers. And so what we do is because we're already working in Newburyport and on the North Shore, we also serve North Shore communities as the Community First Partnership. So what we're doing is we're providing MassSave information, support, access to incentives, access to home energy audits, all of that, to those North Shore communities, specifically in environmental justice or priority group populations. So that's another one of our initiatives. And then the fourth one that we're current, and these are all current, and the fourth one that we're doing is what we call, it's a little different. We're calling it supercharging, it's a mouthful, supercharging clean energy outreach in environmental justice communities. And so for this, we're working in Boston, South Boston, in Roxbury, Mattapan, Rochester. We're working with the Fairmount Indigo Community Development Corporation, CDC, and we're also working on Martha's Vineyard through Vineyard Power. And in this case, what we're doing is we're supporting two community-based organizations to help improve their outreach to their constituents, to their clients, to their populations. So for example, on Martha's Vineyard, I actually didn't know this, but I've learned this. There's a large Brazilian community. I don't know how many people are aware of that, but the whole service, the Martha's Vineyard service industry is largely served by Brazilian immigrants. And they have now been there for actually many generations. Well, I don't know, multiple generations. They've been there for a few generations. So they're not just recent immigrants. They've been there for some time, but there also are recent immigrants coming from Brazil. And so we are working with Vineyard Power that works with the Brazilian community on Martha's Vineyard to help them with, again, energy issues, clean energy outreach, helping them get signed up, access to all of the services to help support them in various ways. So that's just giving you a kind of a sense of this is what MassEnergize is up to, in addition to all of our other work. So what I'd like to do with this presentation is really do a deeper dive into our program in Framingham, because for me, it's where kind of the various things come together. The various issues that relate to environmental justice communities and the definitions, they come together in our program here in Framingham. So really, when you think about it, now, John Walkie did a much better job of giving you a kind of the feel of who and what environmental justice communities and what they're facing. And I'm sure all of you have your own experience. But I'm now going to use kind of what the definition of environmental justice according to the state. Okay, so this is kind of a more limited definition, but the people whom my environmental justice communities serve, or the people are, their issues of language access, their issues of income, and their issues of minority status, racial status, right? So those are the three kind of intersections that generally are used when you think of when the state defines what makes an environmental justice community. It has to do with language access. It has to do with, racial or minority, ethnic group status, and it has to do with income. So This is a map. This is taken from the state's map of Framingham. That's the city of Framingham right there on your right. And you can see that Framingham has the yellow is all, these are census blocks that have these various defined groups in them. So all the yellow is those are census blocks that have and I don't know exactly what the percentage is, but a certain percentage of minority communities, right? So that's yellow. The green, which you can see, down in the kind of the lower right, are minority, where there's census blocks with a certain percentage threshold of minority and income, low income, right? Then you have pink, which are the minority and what they call English isolation. And these are I'm just trying to give you a sense of kind of where we are working and why we chose to work there. And then the blue is where all three come together. So if you know Framingham, that's kind of down in that part of Framingham right there is where the urban heat islands are. It's where the population density is. It's where there is not canopy tree cover. All of those things, and it just happens in air quotes to coincide with where these communities live. So we are working in that pink, green, and blue area is where our program is. So what we're doing is we're trying to identify where the intersection of all of these needs are. And so that's where we've chosen to work to offer our program. Okay, so Solar para Todos, what is our goals? Our goals really are to offer the benefits of clean energy to these communities, right? So reducing energy burden is a big one, because we really feel like clean energy needs to provide tangible benefits. We want to lower electricity bills, and we want to create job opportunities. So you can see once again that all of these are largely income driven, and they're not, it's not like we're trying to plant trees, even though of course that's a good thing. But you can see that when you're working in environmental justice communities, our experience is that people need to feel, as John Waukee said this morning, people need to experience those tangible benefits. Now, there are tangible benefits to tree canopy, of course, but we really want to provide those economic benefits. So that's kind of what our focus has been. So really, how do we reach our target population? And that's what this is really all about. How do we empower these communities? And what are the inputs that we've identified as the inputs that we want to really lift these communities up in terms of really mitigating the aspects of that they're experiencing as energy burden, a variety of things that make the communities unable or they need help with accessing the benefits of clean energy. So
by energy burden, you mean cost?
Yes. Energy burden, typically, yes, we're talking about in terms of cost. How much are they paying for the electricity bills? How much?
It's not about fuel switching or.
Well, it is in some cases, but in our case, what we're trying to do is just say what is the economic burden that you experience just for your energy in general, and then how can we reduce that? So in some cases, it's switching from one form of energy to another. In other cases, where electricity bills are high and you actually end up paying more, okay, how can we lower the cost of electricity? So it's a variety of ways of doing that. But that's how we think of energy burdens. So really, how are we doing this? Well, the first thing we want to do is really we need to engage the community, and we want to engage the community in a meaningful and authentic way. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. But what we've done is we've used an approach that's called kind of authentic community engagement. Because the first step to working with any community, be they environmental justice or otherwise, is basically buying in, making sure that you are a known and trusted part of the community, and you're not coming in as some kind of outsider, white savior complex, right? So authentic community engagement is our first approach. The second is really making sure that we're meeting them with cultural and linguistic access to any materials, any engagement that you do. The third one is that we want to involve members of the community and have them receive the benefits of it. So we've actually hired, and I'll talk a little bit about this. We've hired members of the community to be on our team. And then the fourth is developing partnerships with local organizations. So we've identified these as kind of four critical ingredients to effective work in neighborhoods. Listening to the communities, making sure their voice is heard, making sure that there's access, that they have access to all of the information, materials, and services being provided, making sure that their own members are tangibly benefiting, in our case, in the form of jobs. And then finally, making sure that we're involving other service organizations, other organizations in the community. Okay, so a little bit about our community engagement model. This is actually a model that's been pioneered by other people working in public health. So this is not this model of authentic community engagement comes out of public health. I don't have a public health background, but that's where it's really when you're trying to raise levels of people's awareness of access to public health measures, that this is really where they've come up with this model. And you can see kind of some of the tenets of the model are really active listening. And so we're trying to kind of contrast. How are we listening? How are we engaging? How are we involving members of the community? And so typically, oftentimes organizations that want to come in and affect change use what they call is extractive listening. Okay, what do we need from you? Okay, give us the information. Okay, what's the data? Okay, and that's all very extractive. That's like, we're getting it from you, right? This is data that we need, you're going to get it from you. Like, no, well, they say, no, we have to stop using extractive listening and start using growth listening. And growth listening is about really making sure that communities' voices are being heard, not for the things that you want from them, but the things that they are going to allow them to be empowered by the information that you're going to be bringing. So it's about collaboration, fostering trust, et cetera, et cetera. And then the other way, which they're contrasting is obviously transactional engagement, which is, again, oftentimes, okay, we want something from you, we're going to do this for you. It becomes very transactional. And what they're saying is like, no. Before you offer any service whatsoever, you need to spend time in the community, get to know the community, build trust in the community. And it's only after that's been established that it even makes any sense to offer your services. So that's and we had this idea, oh, we're going to go in and we're going to do this. Like, whoa, no, slow down. No, we're going to spend a lot of time just being in the community, getting to know the community. So, okay. And this maybe is all pretty intuitive to you, but I just wanted to say these are the kind of processes that we've gone through. Okay, so the second one, authentic community engagement, and then, okay, we really want to make sure that language access and language goes along, there's more than just linguistic language, language access. What I say here is that it also promotes inclusive cultural spaces. People, when they hear their own language, when their own language is being used, it's more than just like, oh, I understand it in linguistic terms. It's more sense of identity, cultural familiarity, etc. And it builds space. So what have we done? For our Solar para Todos, we make sure that everything is both in Portuguese and Spanish, in addition to English, so that all of our materials, and we've hired a team. We have our community lead is a native Brazilian, native Portuguese speaker. And so she's our lead for the Solar para Todos initiative. We're using photos of Framingham. We're using things that make people feel familiar, but we're making sure it's in their language, Spanish and Portuguese. So all of our material needs to be, we feel like it needs to be accessible. Okay, the third area that we really want to do is we want to involve, not just from a listening point of view, but directly involving members of the community. So what we've done is we've actually hired people who we call solar ambassadors. And so we're both engaging members of the community, but they are also getting benefit from it, right? They're getting a paycheck from us in order to do this work. Now, we've hired them not so much as employees, but they're independent contractors. And I can talk a little bit more about that later. But what we're doing is we're providing training and support for members of the communities to learn about clean energy, to learn about solar. In our case, this is community solar, to realize the benefits. And then we do the training in all of these various things. We give them a background in renewable energy, specifics of community solar, how to go about doing community engagement, and then some of the details of community solar. So this is just some of the workshop training sessions that we held. And this woman right here, Fabiani, is our program lead who's Brazilian herself. Okay, so again, this is all part of what we call our third action. And so you can see that here are our solar ambassadors who are basically going out, they're tabling, they're going out to communities, they're going to the food pantries, and they are really promoting what we're offering, but they're more than promoting it, they are engaging in dialogue. What are the needs of the community? I mean, oftentimes people are like, community solar, I don't want to learn about community solar. I want to know about, can I get health access? Where's the where do I find a food pantry? So we're dealing with all these other aspects beyond community solar, and we have to be prepared and ready to support these communities. Not necessarily that we're the experts on any of this, but we need to understand that they live in a complex matrix of, as we all do, of needs, right? And reducing their energy burden, that may be our priority. That may not be their priority. They've got other priorities besides reducing their energy burden right now. Thank you very much. I need to get my daughter to a doctor. Like I can't think about energy burdens until I've addressed some of the health needs. So understanding that this is all people have complex needs and that energy is just one. Okay, so this is a little bit more about our solar ambassadors. And what we have learned both from them but with them is helping basically supporting the energy ambassadors themselves, and they become, as you said here, our main point of contact with the community. And then they are really, we're able to dialogue with them because they are in dialogue with the people.
Independent contractor for this guy.
He's yes, he is actually a college student. That photo is just like they've been working hard at the end of the day, and so they're like, okay, we're tired. We've been out on the streets all day. So yeah, that's funny. Okay, and then finally, what we found to be very important is to build partnerships, right? So this is actually the Greater Framingham Community Church. We help them. They do on Thursdays. They do food distribution. They work with a food pantry. So we go and help them with just their activities. That has nothing to do with solar, nothing to do with community, with the work that we're doing. But again, it's about mutual support, building networks of support so that they know who we are, we know who they are, so that when we're out in the streets talking to people about energy, we can also refer people to services, food pantries, etc. So, okay, so that's just a little bit about our work, specifically in Framingham. But okay, so these are what are the challenges? The challenges of doing this work, right? We've identified kind of 5. I mean, there's more than this, right? But these are some of the five areas that we've identified as challenges of doing this kind of community empowerment work. One is just simply building trust, right? In our case, in terms of energy, there's the third-party providers, about that, scammed people, so you have to be, we are in a situation where people don't necessarily trust us. Okay, so how do you overcome that? And we've talked a little bit about what we've been doing. So building trust is a big area. The other is, other issues that are always facing when you're working outside your own language or your own cultural, is you have cultural and linguistic challenges that you need to overcome. How are you going to overcome them? Who's on staff? What languages do they speak? Et cetera, et cetera. And then we've run into problems where we're offering clean energy services and, Eversource, we just heard Eversource is, making billions of dollars. They did not even have, this is the R2, I don't know if people know what the R2 rate is. It's the reduced energy rate that Eversource offers. They did not even have this in Portuguese. So our Portuguese language speakers, our employee translated for Eversource their application. They had it in English, they had it in Spanish. That was it.
No Chinese.
No Chinese. So, excuse me? you are offering this service, but you don't even allow people to apply in the language that they speak. Like, how much sense does that make? Anyway, that's just an example, that's the level to which linguistic access is a real need. So, okay. The third area, obviously political, right? Right now we're facing all kinds of issues. Framingham is just, where people heard about Milford and the recent issue with, what's his name? Gomes, yeah, Gomez. There's fear. There's legitimate fear, right? ICE agents are in the neighborhood, in the community, picking kids up. I mean, not picking kids up, but in this case, yes. And so that's a challenge. How are we going to overcome that? How are we going to deal with that? Well, one of the things that we've been doing is making sure that all of our solar ambassadors have, identification. Just in terms of who they're with, organizations, but also because, people fear them. Like, no, I don't, can we talk to you? No, I don't want to talk to you. So, that's a real challenge when you're working in communities like that, particularly in this climate right now with all the immigration crackdowns. So fear of sharing information, their own uncertain future. Okay. Then another challenge with clean energy is just the complex logistics of it all, the billing processes, the subscription process. It's not simple. It's not simple for us who are native English speaking, Anglo communities, let alone for immigrants who don't understand, who don't necessarily have all of the systems in place, digital bank accounts, et cetera, that clean energy kind of system providers just assume people have. So there's the complexity of logistics. And then for us, it's, retaining your advocates. These are transient communities. Our solar ambassadors, we have a pretty high turnover of people who are coming and going just because that's their life, that's the reality of their lives, right? So these are as you're thinking about doing the work in communities, these are the challenges, some of the challenges that we've faced. Okay, and then here's my last slide. What are some of our lessons learned? So I've already referred to several of these things, but trust is huge, right? Communities tend to trust us more when we engage them. At events, when we establish that we're not just out to get something, but we're there to be, a support, that helps to build trust. Developing feedback loops so that there's communication. When you are working with a community, making adjustments, learning what people are saying, making those changes. Oh, well, why did you do it that way? Oh, well, we didn't know. Okay, well, let's change it, do it differently next time. Time, not trying to rush things. We Anglo, and I'm not speaking for everybody here, but there's this kind of our culture is like, okay, no, let's do this quickly, and we're going to scale this, and there's this whole concept, there's this whole need of efficiency and to make good use of the time. Well, effective community engagement takes time, and what we say, it happens at the speed of community, not at the speed of somebody else's grant deadline or your need to report or something like that. It doesn't happen at that speed. So understanding that people have other needs, their basic needs need to be met in order for them to be thinking about clean energy. And you as a provider need to be able to offer some of these resources. The other thing we've also learned is that we really need to make try to reduce complexity, reduce friction, make sure the processes are much easier to both understand and to participate in. And then finally, and this is not, I'm just kind of going around in the circle here, but finally, really being culturally sensitive, which goes back to trust and goes back to some other things. So these are the lessons we've learned and try to apply as we're doing this kind of work. So, okay, well, I'd love to hear about your experience, any questions. That's all I have in terms of my own slides. But happy to answer any questions we have about MassEnergize or love to hear your own experiences, your own thoughts. So open it up to anybody. Yeah, Deborah.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
First of all, it seems like, at least from what you've just reported, you're really focusing on getting folks clean energy.
In this case, yes.
There are other things that you can do in these communities, like activate them around political advocacy or build urban forests so that you're living at the intersection of food security and permaculture, right?
Absolutely.
So is this the only strategy you're deploying, or is it part of a panoply of strategies? That's my first question.
Yeah, so MassEnergize, we are really focused on energy. I mean, that's our work. Our work, yeah. So we support other communities when they want to do things like, if there's an initiative, tree canopy or food, addressing issues of food security, food insecurity. Like, we're happy to support them, but our work is energy focused.
Is legislation necessary for ensuring that the infrastructure exists for the best creation and distribution of energy?
Uh-huh.
That is an energy piece.
Sure.
But I haven't heard you address like organizing communities to lobby or organizing with communities to imagine what's the most effective
Yeah.
vehicle
Yes.
for distribution of energy.
Yes.
Just as an example,
Sure.
no one in Massachusetts is talking about this, but I want someone to talk about it.
Sure.
Our big climate catastrophe risk is flooding.
Uh-huh.
Now, in Greece, they have created structures so that they create spillways,
Uh-huh.
that then provide the water for
Yeah.
hydropower. So they have
Yeah.
spillways and hydropower facilities
Yep.
built together so that they're mitigating climate catastrophe
Yes.
impacts and providing inexpensive energy.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you use them to put out the fires?
I wish. So I'm saying
Yes.
this to say like so I know you have to do the work with the infrastructure that already exists.
Yeah.
But my question is really, more forward thinking
Yeah.
about advocacy and
Yeah.
creativity or imagineering
Yep.
that we actually fully need.
Yep. Yeah, no, more power to you. And I hope that continues. And we are not at this moment in time doing that. So that's, just something that I would say we're limited by people and budget, et cetera, but I think that's great. And I love where you're going with that. So, sure. Any other comments, questions? Yeah.
So I'm with Mass IPL.
Yeah.
We're working right now in Lawrence on a program with houses of worship,
Mm-hmm.
primarily churches in Lawrence. And we just sort of somewhat, we pivoted a little bit because we've been having a hard time engaging houses of worship.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what we're doing is energy audits,
Mhm.
building envelope, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But we're having a hard time with education pieces
Yep.
in these communities. So one of the things we're trying out is a very small youth ambassador program.
Uh-huh.
Trying to engage younger generations
Yeah.
to pick projects that make sense to them in their
Yeah.
communities and having them design the projects. I'm wondering if you could share, and maybe I'll connect with you afterwards.
Sure.
On how it is. Do you find our assumption, which we hope is true, since we've already jumped in, is that we're going to have an easier time engaging younger generations in these communities, which seems to bear out with your own ambassador program. Can you talk a little bit about that with working with younger folk and how that goes? And then strategies around that, because there's of course the organizing pieces as well.
Yeah.
But tangible and concrete ways that these young adults can engage their communities effect.
Sure. Well, a couple of things. So first, I'll just say we don't have we do have this experience. We don't have a lot of experience. We ourselves are getting more and interested in getting more into doing kind of youth engagement.
Yeah.
And actually, I didn't talk about it here, but one of the aspects of our Solar para Todos is we've partnered with Framingham State University. You might have seen one or two references, and they have actually a whole high school program.
Yeah.
So we've
wooden games or toys.
Yes. So it's through Framingham State University that we have this kind of, and we've kind of piggybacked on their youth program.
Okay.
So they have an existing youth program. I'm happy to put you in touch with the person who runs that, but we've piggybacked onto that. So our experience, and so these are like solar ambassadors you saw tend to be young people. They're not exclusively, but yeah, the guy with his head down. He's a college student. A couple of our solar ambassadors are Framingham State University students, and obviously Framingham residents. So yes, in general, we find that there is an openness, and among so they're more readily involved. Youth, in terms of getting youth ambassadors, youth advocates. So yes, I would say that is the case. But they obviously have their own constraints, largely time, if they're, if they're in school, if they've got responsibilities at home, if, so they have interest, but not always the bandwidth. And so one of our experiences that some of our youth ambassadors, solar ambassadors, are on a very limited time. I mean, in other words, they're working 2 other jobs or whatever, right? And so that is one of their limitations. But as far as motivationally, yes, I would say the youth are a very good constituent to involve, because they do see and they do understand, and they're more open to thinking about what the possibilities are. And so, yeah, I'm happy to talk with you further, but in general, I would say yes, but youth also come with their own, what to say, constraints, as we all do. So I don't know if that helps, but happy to talk more.
Yeah, no, I'll
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah. Alex and then Rachel.
The third program that you do
Yes.
is that your sort of bread and butter
of
providing from your first slide that
that's
he's in the North Shore.
So the Energy for Generations is where we're doing working with elders,
The community,
and then the Community First Partnership. So
which is the Mass Saves.
that's a Mass Save program. That is, I would not call that our bread and butter. But that is a program whereby we're just working with two communities on the North Shore, providing support for Mass Save programs. So we do.
Because we did that in Newton.
Okay.
Actually, we tried to do that where we were renting, and then
Yeah.
we got unhoused by our landlord.
Okay.
For trying to do that as a renter.
Uh-huh.
And now we own a home, so we can do whatever that.
Yeah.
Want.
Yes.
But
Yes.
like I think about low income communities.
Yes.
Like, almost everyone's a renter.
Yes. Yes.
And you guys tell people, yeah, you can do this as a renter. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what we were told.
Yeah.
So we did it, and then we got screwed.
Yeah, so
That
right. So renters present a whole big issue in terms of clean energy. Obviously, because much of clean energy requires, technology to be purchased and installed. Not always. So there's several different responses. One, the reason why we chose community solar in Framingham, because all of our communities they're all renters. I mean, we haven't worked with any homeowners, actually. All of these Brazilians, all of these Latinos who are living in these low-income neighborhoods, they're all renting. So that's why we actually chose community solar, because it does not require any installation. It does not require any input. If you pay electricity, you're eligible for community solar.
And what kind of landlord?
It doesn't matter, because it's a subscription. For community solar, it's entirely a subscription service. It has its challenges, but landlords don't have to be involved. If the electric bill is in your name, you're eligible. That's all. But there are other challenges to working with renters, and some of our other programs. And that's why there's more and more. The new round of Mass Save is providing, there's the Lean program, there's LIHEAP, there's these various other programs that are state-funded programs to support renters with clean energy in upgrades, but they do involve the landlords. But the landlords get an incentive to upgrade if they have more than X number of units. So if they have if it's like a 6-unit building, if they get three, I think I'm not sure all the details, but basically if you get more than 50% of your renters to agree to do something, then as a landlord, you can get the whole building covered. So there's more and more incentive programs to incentivize landlords, but for renters, there are increasing number of benefits that you can do. And the Mass Save program also provides a lot of renter-focused home energy upgrades. And the audits are obviously free, but the upgrades, insulation, all of that is free to the landlord if the renter meets an income qualification. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to incentivize landlords to be working with their tenants on these things. So again, it's a kind of a complex It's complex in terms of what's being offered, but there is more and more being offered because there's more and more realization that renters are a category that need to be addressed. Yes, yeah. So I don't know. I hope that helped. Rachel?
So I mentioned I'm a community organizer with also, so we do a little bit of like the legislative side.
Great.
Of this. So I know that's a little bit beyond your scope, but I found the action model really interesting, especially the communication aspect of it.
Yeah.
Some of the biggest barriers that we run into is kind of the jargon around not just the science, but like the legal kind of aspects.
Yeah.
So I wanted to hear a little bit about the tactics of language access in English and kind of like the tactics you've used for accessibility and just making sure that this is something that someone with limited
Right.
external knowledge would still be able to understand and see the value of.
Right. So if I understand your question, how do we make how do we make our outreach materials and how our approach linguistically accessible? Is that?
You said that a lot better.
No, I just wanted to make sure I want to make sure I was answering the correct question. So, well, our approach is obviously it's an iterative process in terms of even when we're writing, we're doing messaging, right? So you can come up with what you think is a great message, but it may not resonate, right? And so we use a whole process whereby we're testing out messaging with our communities. Does this resonate? So for example, if I go to that supercharging clean energy engagement, that's what that whole project is all about. How do we improve the community outreach on behalf of the CBOs, the community-based organizations? Because they might say, oh, well, we're sending materials out to our community, but nobody is responding. It's like, okay, well, there's obviously some things being missed, right? Lost in translation. So we've done a whole extensive survey, and we've actually worked with Boston College with their social innovation lab and their communications lab to develop messaging that resonates in these communities with other. So there's a process of testing messaging. And we went through this whole back and forth. We were doing a survey in terms of, does this message resonate? Does this message resonate? Does this resonate? Does that resonate? Where do you get your information? And so learning about where people get their information is number one. We all assume, well, don't you just get it from, don't you just get it off the internet? Like, no, don't you, what social media groups are you on? What social media platforms do people access? Where do they get information? What we've learned, actually, for these communities, we've learned that the number one place that they get trusted messaging is from the community health centers. Now, we didn't know that, but we asked people to rank, where do you receive information that you act upon, right? The number one place that they get the information that they trust and that they take action on is not from, Facebook. It's from the community health center. We're like, wow, okay, that's good information. And that was consistent across our communities. So we've learned that we need to go to the community health centers and put up flyers there. We need to work with the community health centers. They were also surprised that they were the most trusted source of information, right? So that was really interesting. That was really interesting to us. So
what would the other
we had things like signboard, a signboard on, a bullet, we did bulletin boards, we did signboards, we did, at your hairdresser, from the internet, Facebook, these were, we provided them with a list of possibilities.
As you're saying, it makes sense because there's a profoundly intimate interaction going on.
Yes.
I would say that.
Yeah.
More so than the hairdresser.
Yeah.
Right.
So for example, here's another, this we didn't discover, but this is an interesting thing. This is the Yale program on climate communications. They have identified museums as the most trusted source of environmental information. Not politicians, not your activist organizations, museums. Museums are the most trusted source of environmental information in the United. This is according to all of their surveys. So this is kind of, the health center, the museum. These are sources where people trust. They trust the information they're getting from health centers, from museums. Yeah.
Not to switch to the museum, but the thing about health centers, I mean, our experience in community organizing with Greater Boston Interfaith Organization, GBIO, is the heart of relational organizing, relationships.
Yes,
And so I was thinking houses of worship would be deeply trusted. but
Yes.
Whatever, it's in the relationship and active listening and finding out what's on your mind,
Yep.
what keeps you up at night.
yep, yep.
And then I think our congregations work in solidarity, so.
Mhm.
One environmental thing that came to mind is when Grant AME, which is on Melnia Cass Boulevard, they were gonna come and chop down all the trees on Melnia Cass Boulevard. And they were like, I mean, that was the first time I saw a congregation mobilize around environmental stuff.
Uh-huh.
It was like, they wouldn't be doing that, in
Mhm.
another community.
Yeah.
So we in our other congregations, we stand together with each other.
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
They are, but it's the concerns that come up from relationships and conversations.
Exactly,
So it doesn't
yes.
surprise me that a health center,
Yeah,
where you're having these conversations would be trusted places.
yeah.
I'm gonna talk to my friend who's at a museum. You're ready to go, guess what? Yeah, that was-
Yeah,
that's
so if you go to
interesting.
Yale, I mean, I don't know where it's written, but we actually had a Yale speaker at our, I don't know if you know, MassEnergize holds a climate conference, which was like in April. And one of our keynote speakers was from Yale, from the Yale Center on Climate Program. And he was like, the number one source of trusted information in the United States on environmental issues are museums.
Say, as a clergy person, as a rabbi, I'm totally not surprised that congregations are not higher on the list. Because
Right.
religion is a place of great wounding for a lot of people.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
it's also a place where, at least in Jewish congregations, there's a great deal of disagreement
Mm.
around theology, around
Mhm.
politics, around Israel, Palestine, like name it, there's conflict, right? Not
Yeah.
everybody likes the rabbi, they complain about that, so it's not it's not I don't know what the word is, it's not a stable intellectual environment
Mm.
for transmission of information that's gonna be continually trustworthy.
Mhm.
And I can totally see that in not all healthcare situations, certainly
Yeah.
not in the ER.
Right, but
Community.
communities, yes, community health centers. We found that community health centers were consistently the most trusted source of information that people, again, we asked, where do you receive information that you take action upon? So it's not like, where do you get your information? Well, I get it from the news. Like, no, information that I'm going to trust and take action on. If it come from the health center, I will, that's where.
Their utility bill, really.
So, right. Okay, well, I think we're almost out of time, but any other, yeah, no, I hope. So, good. So I mean, if anybody wants, I have my business cards. Also, MassEnergize, we have a table down there. You can also pick up some more information about MassEnergize. But here, if anybody wants, pick up a business card, feel free to get in touch with me. Check us out online.
Anybody downloaded the Sched app?
Yeah.
That you got by
Yeah.
email or a
Yeah.
front desk, that's also a useful tool for the rest of your day, as well as connecting with people.
And thank you for coming.
But-
Thank you for coming.
So far.